So how about this one here? Again, we have square roots here. So let's factor the square root part of this first. Actually, let's state our restriction. Well, we need to factor before we state our restriction. So we're going to do factor out x, and that's going to be x squared plus 2x plus 1. That's a perfect square. Okay, so I'm going to again write this out. X plus 1 over square root x, and that becomes, right, I'll actually do a couple steps here. That factors to x plus 1 squared. The squared and square root undo each other. It's a factor. There's no plus there, so I'm okay to do that. So now I'm going to rewrite this as x plus 1 over x plus 1 square root x minus x plus 5 over x. Okay, so I've got to state my restrictions. X cannot be equal to 0, okay, because I can't divide by 0, cannot be equal to -1, and x must be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so maybe I should write it as not equal to, can't be less than 0. Okay, so if it can't be less than 0, okay, then it has to be greater than 0. So all this restriction then means that x must be greater than or equal to 0. So I'm not going to write it as a restriction. I'll write it as what x can be. X has to be positive. Okay, otherwise we'll end up with negative or dividing by 0. Okay, so what are my factors then? Well, I'm going to do the same thing as I did above. I can express square root as a factor and just say that that's square root times square root. So now I can see all the factors involved. Okay, so I'm missing a factor of x plus 1. Over here I'm missing a factor of square root x. Okay, so there looks like I have my common denominator. Okay, I don't know what the numerator is going to look like, but at least I know I have a common denominator. So now I just have to expand this out. I'm going to end up with square root x times x plus square root x minus x. I'm going to put this in brackets because I have to subtract everything. X squared plus 6x plus 5. There are no like terms here, and so I'm going to end up with the common denominator is x square root x times square root x, which is x, and I'm left with also the x plus 1 factor. Okay, so those are my restrictions. I've got all this here. Just take away the brackets. There are no like terms, so nothing will go together. So those are all my terms in the numerator. Don't try to put things together that don't belong. And there's my common denominator.